Hey everybody, it is Monday, August 3rd, 2020, and this is Alex from Tiger Skull RPG, and today I'm going to take you through the gameplay side of Hunter Oathenshard, what I was thinking, how she would play as you play this in your RPGs at home. So yeah, we're going to get into her dragon form, the cards, the two stat blocks this month, and we might even talk a little bit about some of the inspiration of the setting and all that. So let's get into it here. I just want to mention the music we're listening to is from Purple Planet. Check them out if you're interested. Yeah, so a couple items here, two weapons, and then one kind of magical item. Let's start with the axe. So this is a magic weapon. This is the Hallowed Great Axe. Bright gleaming arcs streak off each stroke of the heavy axe, slashing clean and true. So it's a heavy axe, two-handed. So you have to be, you can't. It's not. I mean, she's got one-handed axes as well. So if you can't wield this thing, then maybe give this one to another party member. It is heavy. It's 7 pounds, which is a little bit heavier than I'm not sure off the top of my head how much Great Axe typically weighs, but I think we added a bit there. This is the most valuable item of the three at 6.5 thousand gold. Yeah, boy. Doing 1d12 plus 2, and we'll get into that now. I guess let's read the back here. In an act of desperation, the divine elders sacrificed any trinkets of worship they could. Chalices, effigies, pendants, all would give body to the forge. The divine ingot rested before them as a final plea to the gods, and in such a way, the hallowed great axe had come to be. And it deals 1d12 damage. Figures 10 feet or closer fall within attack radius, and you deal an extra +2 to damage rolls against the undead. So, I mean, unless you have an undead party member, this is not going to affect you really in the encounter. This is more as a drop as you go forward. That's the intent of the axe. And this plays into the backstory that she was at one time a kind of a hero character whose goal was to rid the land of evil. We'll talk about how that didn't pan out for her as we dig a bit deeper. Let's move on to the next card here. We got the Riving Axes, and this is just a standard gear item. 3.5 pounds, I remember, was deliberately made it a bit heavier than your typical throwing axe. 1d6 plus 2, we'll get to that plus 2 in a second here. That is, this is for ranged attacks, and here's the range value. 1d6 would be the melee, your standard melee damage, and then the plus 2 is for the range buff. The noble ritual of the hunt is lost on these blades. Slashing meat from bone serves only a cold appetite for vengeance. Okay, and let's go to the back here. The heft of the axes seems excessive at first. However, as you take to throwing form, the added weight plants you firmly in place, granting added stability to your stance. The Riving Axes deal 1d6 slashing damage in melee and ranged attacks. When thrown, peak damage occurs when targeting figures standing at 15 and 30 foot ranges. When striking figures located at these distance intervals, add +2 to damage rolls. Yeah, so I prepared a little scene for us to explain what's happening here. Let me just hop on over. Okay. Now, do I have something to draw with? I do. Okay. So, for that ability, your range is 15 to 15 feet here to 35, was it? Let's see. 30. So, 5, 10, 15, 25, 30. Oh, I guess it's just here. Oh, I have 35. Sorry, 35. Okay, so this is where it ends, right here. Now let's get a nice erase. Let me just erase this. Alright, whatever. Here we go, 35. So, and then within the those intervals of 15 feet, you know, we're imagining the axe is hurling through the air, and it's, you know, during its arc, it's hitting, you know, this is where its prime slashing arc is. I don't know how to say it other than how I wrote it. So if you have a figure, you know, your figures standing here are going to get the +2. This guy and this guy get the +2. If you were standing here, let's say, you would just take the standard damage within this throwing axe range. So that's kind of how it goes. That's kind of how that ability works. And then her other one, did we talk? Yeah, with the Great Axe. We might need to touch on that in her kit, actually, because this Great Axe, what we said about this was that it has a, yeah, so here's a 10 feet or closer fall within attack radius. So I guess the only real difference there is that, you know, typically to be adjacent to somebody, you know, this is adjacency here, but if your figure falls here, you can get attacked by the Great Axe. So, yeah, so figures, yeah, I think it's pretty standard. If you're standing here, then you're at range for that other melee weapon with her. And if you're using the weapon, then you are granted that range. So that's kind of how that works. Alright, why can't I erase this? Well, alright, I'm just going to undo. I think I was probably drawing on the background layer there. Okay, let's get back to business here. Yeah, so you've got this other ranged weapon. Did we talk about everything? 245. It's, you know, well-crafted item, but it's, you know, it's not ornate for the sake of being so. It's still pretty practical, so the value is a little bit. I've definitely made items that have, you know, really ramped up the value there. So that's how that one works. Okay, Agony's Beacon. This is really just a straight up magic item. Let's get into it here. Shine unto me the path of the wretched, so that I might confront the writhing face of agony. And then on the back we have a little bit more flavor. The final phrase falls to silence, and the spell is beckoned. Condensation beads within the glass. A luminous mist takes form within the beacon. Before long, the mist begins to manifest in the ambience of the surroundings. The vapor takes to the shape of a path. Let it guide you towards the anguish you seek. Okay, so let's get into what it does. Once per day, Agony's Beacon can be called upon to draw a path to the most intense expression of suffering within a 5-mile radius. The condition of suffering is measured at the level of the spirit and may not necessarily be bound to the domain of the living. So this is like a very kind of this is might spark some, I guess, story kind of motivated gameplay here. It's not really like a combat item like the other two are really kind of, you know, nuts and bolts, kind of just yeah, very tactile. So yeah, so you use this kind of when you want to advance, give the players a direct path somewhere. Yeah, and you can. I mean, it's once per day. I don't know if they want to activate it every day or not, but I just felt like shouldn't be used on a whim and that sort of thing. But yeah, you activate it. It's pretty vague about the. So here it says the final phrase falls to silence. So you could ask your players to you know, speak some kind of ritualistic words that unlock the power, and maybe you want to gate that its usage by saying like by making them discover what those words are, you know, in order to activate this thing. I usually leave, like, if something requires like a magical phrase to like enact, I just leave that open and up to you to either decide to not use that rule or I guess condition, or to make up a cool phrase that maybe makes sense in your story. So yeah, so that's it. You say the phrase, it's going to glow, it's going to show your players, a source of suffering, and it may be some kind of victim, but it could also be like a ghost, like a tormented soul of a ghost that might also spark a totally different kind of adventure. This is kind of an item that's what's it called, like a hook, kind of a game hook sort of item. Alright, so let's move on to the 5e sheets that we have here. I've got 2 this month, one for Hunter, and then one for the beast form, the Teeth of Terror. Let's get into it. Hunter Oathenshard, medium human, lawful evil. She's under control of the Reanimation Master, so that's why she's lawful evil. She's got the studded armor. Not as much health as some of my other characters, but you'll find out she does a lot of damage, so she's got a lot of opportunity, different ways to do damage at all kinds of ranges. Let's get into it. Anyway, here's her scores. They're pretty, nothing's too low, nothing's too high. She's pretty strong overall, but nothing crazy overpowering. She's got her wisdom is higher than most anything else here, and that's to sort of like, it's because of her story. She's like she's very comfortable being in the outdoors, right? So she's got survival skills here, perception, animal handling, your typical languages, common, dwarvish. I would think she's communicating with the Reanimation Master in some sort of like telepathic way. Not because he's I won't get into it. He's got his own omniscience and I forget what the name of that spell is, but he doesn't rely on language to communicate, so that's what's happening there. Anyway, let's get into this. As Warden of the North, Hunter Oathenshard patrols the cold passages in service of her grim tyrant Deus Leviat, the Reanimation Master, of course. She stains the land with the blood of pitiful vagrants, wholly without repent, fetching souls for her ageless master. This callous existence was not always as such. At a time, she was a valiant hero and an image of hope to her people. Ultimately, she was betrayed by her own bitter rage. Her blind pursuit of justice came at the loss of her only true friend, and a torturous end it was. Utterly broken by the suffering sight of her beloved ally, Hunter pled fealty to Leviat and brought a merciful end to the anguish, and in that death their souls would be forever bound. Indeed, Hunter Oathenshard's fealty endures, and the twisted spirit of her fallen companion lives dormant within her. Should her ever-present rage come to boil, it will be that the primal monster, the Teeth of Terror, will erupt into being and take its demonic form. So, in a nutshell, what happened was she fucked up. Her rage, her rage is her power, but it's also her downfall. That fuck up caused, basically the death of her doggy, and then her doggy, she's, it's in it, like we read there, the dog was kind of suffering. In order to end the suffering, she pledges her allegiance to the Reanimation Master, and because he's like twisted asshole kind of guy, not only is she his servant now, but she's also going to be kind of endowed with this power to shapeshift into her dog form, and that's how she's able to kind of retain that her spirit of her companion, but now it's also tied to her rage in kind of this poetic way. So let's get into her first kind of trait here. Enraged. As Hunter Oathenshard is enraged, she gains immunity to fatigue. Hunter gains advantage on all attack rolls and deals an extra +4 damage to melee attacks. Enraged stays active for 60 seconds. So Enraged has always been her power, and even in servitude here, she's going to continue to kind of use that. And this enraged state, the 60 seconds of an enraged state, is really the focus of her kit. So, once she is enraged, and we'll talk about how she becomes enraged later on, but while she is, we'll talk about Rage Shift. Shafts of radiant light emanate from Hunter Oathenshard's eyes and mouth. Her expression writhes as her features convulse and deform. Amazingly, what was her body is gone, and in its place the menacing greatness that is the Teeth of Terror. As Hunter Oathenshard is enraged, she may shapeshift to take on the form of the Teeth of Terror. Assume full hit points for the Teeth of Terror. These are tracked separately, so you're getting a fresh... when you're the Teeth of Terror, you're getting the fresh, 5e stats over there. And you don't have to track... I mean, you don't have to convert health or anything like that. You just kind of track them onto their own sheets. Yeah, so that's Rage Shift, and I think I better just talk about her legendary action first, because this describes how she attains the state of enraged that we've defined here. So, legendary action. As Hunter Oathenshard receives attack damage, and while Hunter Oathenshard's hit points are below maximum, roll 1d6. On an outcome of 4 or less, Hunter releases a harrowing cry and deals a burst of 1d4 force damage to all adjacent figures. The recipients of the damage are sent stumbling outward, distancing 5 feet for each point of damage taken. Hunter instantly enters her enraged state. So let's switch over. Let's look at it in here. Okay. Okay, so yeah, the way that works, you get into an encounter with her. Maybe somebody is here. They deal damage to Hunter. From that point on, as soon as she's had damage dealt to her, she has a likelihood to become enraged. Let's switch back 1 second. Yeah, you roll the 1d6 after. So, okay, let's say this guy, he comes in, lands a hit. Okay, she's taken damage. Next guy comes in, and on this next hit now, this is when we roll the d6. And yeah, it doesn't turn out your way, or maybe she doesn't get enraged right away, and then the third guy comes in, and he does his attack, and on this one it just happens to be this happens to proc the to trigger the enraged state, so rage break. At which point you roll the d4. If it's an outcome of 2. And everybody, you go back 5 spaces. You take a little bit of damage from that, and you're knocked back 2 spaces. Yeah, so that's 5 feet for every roll. Oops. So it'd be something like that. So she makes the distance. She's enraged now, and her kit is kind of designed to. Like you'll notice, these guys are now, as we talked about before, within that axe throwing range to get +2 on her axe. So it's kind of like designed to position people, yeah, into a range where she can kind of mess them up a bit. So she's enraged at this point. All right. Now, what can you do? What can she actually do? Well, she's got a multi-attack action, or well, I mean it's not an action, but it affects her actions. So a melee attack, twin cleave with an axe in each hand. Hunter swings both blades forward in a horizontal arc. +6 to hit. Reach is 5 feet. On hit, do 2d6 +2 slashing damage. If you're enraged, you add 4 to that. That's quite a bit of damage. So this is like her big melee attack, and I guess you might, as a DM, do this a couple times before. This is what I would say are the first. This might be the first, depending on whether you trigger Rage Break right away like happened there. If not, you might use this ability or this action right away, because at some point you can toss these axes away, and I guess you could really get into, she doesn't have infinite access, so you could play around with her, having to dig them out of trees or wherever they land. Well, not dig them, but pry them out. Anyway, so while she's got her axes, she's got this twin cleave. Next, Hallowed Great Axe. Hunter grips the base of the axe and swings wildly in a forward-facing conical arc. +6 to hit, up to 3 targets. Range 10 feet. Hit on hit 1d12 +4 slashing damage, and if she's enraged, you add another 4 to that. So that's a pretty heavy hitter. So let's talk about this. It's a cone, up to 10 feet. So really, it's just something like this, and I guess that translates kind of like into this. In a forward-facing, and I guess maybe you could argue that this is her forward-facing cone. But anyway, that's for you to figure out. But that's basically it. Yeah, just a little bit more range than a melee attack. She's doing this really broad. She's like really just holding it at the base and doing a broad swing. And I feel like a football telecaster right now. What else we got? Oops, excuse me. Riving Toss. In one fluid motion, her axe is released and death spirals forth. Hunter's expertise with the throwing axe is simply unmatched. +7 to hit, single target, range 35 feet, on hit 1d6. Targeted opponents are standing at 15 or 35 foot intervals receive an additional +4 slashing damage as they fall within the prime cycles of the axe's rotation. So the numbers here are a little bit larger than on the cards because she's an axe specialist. She just is, these are her weapons, so they're a little bit more useful to her. And I think we pretty much explained that. I will say that these have a +7 to hit. I'm basing this off of her finesse, which I guess I could add to the cards. You could play those as finesse as well. Yeah, but yeah, or it's up to you. Usually with these kind of items, you can use strength or dexterity to up your plus to hit. But in this case, I'm using the finesse trait. So anyway, so that's what she does. So the melee attacks, she makes 2 of those. We talked about that. Let's move on to her wolf form now. So yeah, she totally gets a whole new block here once she becomes the Teeth of Terror. A large beast, unaligned. It's not really she doesn't really have a personality. It's not a form that she spends a lot of time in when she's not really just pursuing a kill for the moment. She's got 18 AC, natural armor, a few more hit points than her human form. Faster, can fly. The abilities score, or sorry, her ability scores are completely different here. Pretty common, I guess. Kind of beastie, dark vision. Dogs can see a little better in the dark. Passive perception, immune to cold, or resistant to cold at least. So yeah, nothing crazy here. Let's read some. I always open up with a little bit of lore first, so let's see what I wrote here. Out from the night's mist descends the embodiment of primal rage itself. The winged beast fixes a glassy stare as it licks its chops, salivating in anticipation. The beast knows the scent of fear. With each advancing step, fright's staunch aroma grows denser. The massive creature seems to truly revel in the horror that she brings. Okay, so she gets legendary resistance. If the Teeth of Terror fails a saving throw, it can choose to succeed instead. Raid shift at any moment. Hunter, Oathenshard, and the Teeth of Terror may decide to return back to her human form. Multi-attack, the Teeth of Terror makes 2 melee weapon attacks. So you'll notice in the next 2 abilities, the next 2 actions, I should say, I've listed and defined them as melee weapon attacks. And melee weapon attack here. So multi-attack really only applies to these two kind of close range attacks, and the rest are behave a bit differently. We'll get into that, but that's why I added this melee weapon attack specification. So here we go. The bite of the she-wolf. Her pronounced canines are abnormally large and dramatically lethal. Melee weapon attack, +9 to hit, reach 5 feet, single target, on hit, 2d10, +4 piercing damage. And then we've got also this claw, which isn't as powerful, but if for whatever reason you need to do slashing damage to the party, then you've got this option as well. Or maybe you just want to take it easy and not just always do the same, attack. Characters shouldn't always be played as if they're like a video game. So you don't just always do your. Maybe there's another reason to do this attack. You just want to vary it up a little bit. So melee weapon attack. So this is a multi-attack opportunity here too. +9 to hit, reach 5 feet, single target, on hit, 1d12 +2 slashing damage. Big damage here, and especially considering you can multi-attack. Okay, the next two actions are a bit more unique, I guess. Grand. The massive wings thrust the beast forward. Gnarled claws dig upon impact. +9 to hit, single target, hit on hit, do 1d12 +4 piercing damage with range of 40 feet. On hit, targeted figure is knocked prone. So, it's just a large lunge forward, and you can ignore like small obstacles and stuff like this because she'll be in the air, and so that's kind of the pouncing death. And then finally we've got the Swooping Tackle. From the air, Teeth of Terror dives downward with incredible pace. She skims across the ground plane, horns facing forward, battering anyone in her path. From the air, Teeth of Terror may perform Swooping Tackle in an action, targeting multiple figures in a 25-foot line. Players may attempt a dex saving throw of DC 18 to dodge the attack and avoid any damage. On hit, do 2d8 +6 bludgeoning damage, and figures struck by the attack are also knocked prone again. So let's go back to the board here. Okay. So, Let me. Which part do I want to break down first here? Yeah. So she's from the air, which is kind of, I looked up the D&D exactly how they handle air flying, and it is in 5e it's different than I think 3.5. So you pretty much can take flight at any time, and there's really, as a DM, nothing to stop you from doing this. Even if you are in an action from the ground, I think you would just kind of, since your movement can be basically walking or by flight, you just kind of need to take that movement action first. And then, so you're in the air, so you get a 25-foot line. So you do your movement and position yourself wherever you want to be. I guess if they're here, I mean, there's no way you're catching two of them at once, but there's nothing to say you couldn't if they were. And then you perform your Sweeping Tackle. So here's your arc, 25 feet. And everybody in here needs to make that DC 18 saving throw, I guess. And you take some damage. You're knocked prone. Was there anything else that I'm missing here? Yeah, I mean, you can miss the damage altogether by doing that. So you've got a chance to not take that damage. But it's there isn't really a plus to hit kind of trait here of the action, so this is really the only way to avoid it once it's her turn to kind of do this. So that's basically her kit. I did take a, I wanted to fill the space, so what this is just kind of the perspective of somebody, because the story is that she's patrolling the northern grounds and she's collecting souls for her master. So I just wanted to include a little bit of like a lore of what someone might experience, a traveler in this area being pursued by the Teeth of Terror. So here we go. The thing stalks the woods under moonlight, standing tall as the pines, its head spouting 4 horns. What god has made this terror? I suspect that I shall never know, for as I sit here writing this final entry, cloaked in snow and suppressing my urge to cry out, I can hear its heavy breath drawing near. So this is just like I said, something quick just to like illustrate, I guess, what she's doing on a day-to-day. It's kind of just like this anonymous, imagine you, and you can even play it that way, like your party is exploring the grounds, and then you find this note, like maybe this is your first exposure to the encounter at all, like you didn't realize that it's not as if you're coming here to like slay some monster, but you just happen to be traveling, and then you find this note somewhere by a tree, and you're like, oh shit, what is this thing? It's kind of like an omen of things to come, I guess, just to get something going. So you can use it as that. That's it. That's pretty much everything. Let's have a look here at the illustrations. So we've got, the character. This look of rage in her eyes, or at least, mild annoyance. And her beast form, spirit, is kind of always behind her. Ready to take shape, and she's in this cold, this cold wasteland, and that's it. So she's preventing. She's in front of this bridge here, so it's like there's this passage, and this is where she's catching you, I guess. And I wanted a little bit of a different landscape than you might typically see with like the peaks, the peaked slopes in the background. I kind of wanted these really like strange tall mountains that are just sticking up, and actually it's kind of hard to see, there's a lot going on, but I did some of my look development work here, where there's these big tall mountains back there, and there's this bridge that she's in front of, and I wanted them to kind of have a lot of this motion, this kind of up and down motion, like a heartbeat, like a really insane, like a, I don't know what you call that, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Just like a really high blood pressure kind of motion in the image. Anyway, so there's some inspiration that I took along the way. At what point I thought, instead of a wolf, what if she had like some kind of crazy demon thing, and I drew up this demon, kind of armor demon character. But ultimately I decided, no, I'm just going to make kind of a dragon wolf, and so I started Googling a bunch of just different creatures that I felt would help me with that. There's some inspiration for what went into the design of the wolf itself. That's pretty much it. So I hope that made a lot of sense. If not, you can always reach out to me on Discord or on Patreon or here in the comments. And thanks for being a patron. It's very inspiring and keeps me going. And I guess we'll catch you next time. We'll be talking about the Sentinel of Sorrows and his gameplay and all that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So thanks again, and take care, everybody.